News of the day.
Mr. Zimmerman, have you made a decision as to whether or not you want to testify in this case?
With values that never die.
There are certainly a lot of controversies or scandals brewing right now when it comes to the Obama administration.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Dealing with the federal government is not always high-tech, and it's not always user-friendly.
The stories that matter.
This is a massive escalation in the tension here in Egypt.
The issues that count.
I don't know why the media tries to make this into a sensation. We have never hidden the fact that we supply Syria with weapons.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
He's got the red, white, blue flying high on the farm. Semper Fi tattooed on his left arm. Spend a little more in the store for a tag in the back that says USA.
Welcome to American Heartland. This is Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at worldtribune.com. Come on in, come on in. That's how I like to greet all of you. I wish I could be cooking a meal for all of you. Just entertained some friends and had a blast doing it. Haven't been doing it enough, I realize, since I've had the kids. Got to do a lot more of it. So it's great today to actually welcome a friend to the show and a brilliant man who is going to discuss a hot button issue with me. He is a Renaissance man. He is Carl Gallups, the host of Freedom Friday and the best-selling author of Final Warning and yet to be released, Be Thou Prepared. Carl, welcome to the broadcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Dr. Grace. It's always an honor to be with you.
It's such a pleasure to have you. And today we're going to basically continue a discussion that you and I started on Friday on your show.
Yeah. This is the story that is going to keep on going for a while, I do believe.
It is, and it is about the reality TV show on TLC, 19 Kids and Counting. Yeah. One of the stars of the show, Josh Duggar, has admitted, he has confessed, he has revealed that, in fact, he did molest his young sisters when he was age 14 and 15. Essentially, the media outed him. The tabloid did, In Touch Weekly. They got a hold of a police report and they released it. And now this story is all over the news, especially because the family is a Christian family of a very, very successful reality TV show. And the question we're about to discuss is it enough that Josh Duggar had apologized to his sisters, had received counseling, his family had told the authorities? Is that enough? Or is the media just doing its job by outing what happened years and years ago? What do you think, Karl?
Well, I think it's extremely complex and extremely complicated. I've got an anecdotal scenario that I'd like to present to you and your listeners that I think will help you to understand where I'm coming from. But and I don't think the story's over. And I think there are still many untold facts. And as a matter of fact, I watched a lot of that interview last night. And even though, of course, I'm a pastor and a Christian, I'm very sympathetic to the Duggars and the families.
And just to clarify, he's referring to the Megyn Kelly interview. She's gotten two segments that came out this week. You're right. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so I watched it, but it even though I'm extremely sympathetic, and I'm a pastor and have ministered to families like this in very similar situations, I was really, I don't know the word I want to use. I started to say appalled, but that's too strong. I was taken back by Megyn Kelly's seeming to kind of want to kind of make this not as big a deal as it might be, as it might become. I think that might come back to bite Megyn later on, especially since some new information has come out today that the Duggars were not forthcoming in that interview, and several facts. But on the other hand, my heart broke, of course. And, of course, our hearts were supposed to break when we watched them crying and talking about it. But
and Carl, before you elaborate on that, I want to play a clip from that interview.
Yeah.
Here is Megyn Kelly asking them about the moment that they learned that their son was molesting their daughters.
Take us back to 2002. How did you first learn that there was a problem with Josh?
Well, 12 years ago, we went through one of the most darkest times that our family's ever gone through. And our son Josh came to us on his own, and he was crying, and he had just turned 14. And he said that he had actually improperly touched some of our daughters. And it was...
We were shocked. I mean, we were just devastated. I don't think any parent is prepared for trauma like that. And I think we had one ray of hope in that Josh had a tender conscience, and he was the one that came and shared on his own, even though the others really didn't know anything of his wrongdoing.
This is a young boy who has come to you with shocking information. What did he say? I mean, how did you respond to him? What was that like, that exchange?
There was so much grief in our hearts. I think as parents, we felt, oh, we're failures. You know, here we tried to raise our kids to do what's right, to know what's right. And yet, one of our children made some really bad choices. And I think as a parent, we were devastated.
Well, you know, Karl, I thought that, yes, you're right. Megyn Kelly was showing a lot of sympathy. But, you know, when she asked the questions and they respond the way they do, admitting that they felt like failures, I mean, that almost brings tears to my eyes. I can just imagine my son saying something like that. I would feel like a failure.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm getting ready to give an anecdotal, well, it's more than anecdotal. It's a very, very real-life scenario that I think will help you and your listeners both understand how torn I am over this. But, you know, I spent 10 years in Florida law enforcement as a lawman with 2 different sheriff's offices and the Department of Corrections. And I was a deputy sheriff and did my own criminal investigations in one of those departments. And then I've been 30 years in the ministry as a pastor. And so as a lawman and as a pastor, 29 years in one church of a large church on the Gulf Coast, I've dealt with this numerous times. It's sad. But it's interesting. What the clip you just played, Megyn Kelly danced all around a huge fact that most people don't know, but I'm looking at an article on the web right here. It's all over the web if you know what to look for. Here's what happened with the reporting. And Megyn Kelly never addressed this. In 2006, when this police report was filed, do you know why it was filed?
Yeah, it was filed because they were supposed to do an interview with Oprah, and then Oprah was tipped off. They had some kind of a dark secret.
Yes, and until that happened, apparently there was not going to be a police report filed.
Right, but they had gone to see one officer of the law who had determined on his own that there was nothing there.
Well, but the rest of the story on that is that this In Touch magazine that's done this investigation just a few hours ago released an article entitled The Duggar Interview with Megyn Kelly, 7 Crucial Facts They Didn't Tell You. And then it says the cover-up continues. And they address that officer that they went to, who the Duggars said, and I heard him live say this last night on the interview, that they didn't really know the guy. He was just the officer on duty and yada, yada, yada. But the guy, not having heard the interview, was interviewed by In Touch, and there were witnesses there. I think there was an attorney there, said that, oh, yeah, he knew him well, and that he had been in several conferences with the Duggars, and they knew each other and had done stuff together. So one of these people is telling a huge lie. If it's the guy that's in prison, of course, he's in prison for 56 years because of child pornography.
Right, but that was after the fact. I mean, we know they didn't know that at the time. Yeah, that was after.
Well, we hope they didn't know that. We hope that. See, this is what I'm saying. We can't. I'm telling you, I'm coming at this from a cop. There's a lot we don't know, and I'm sympathetic to the Duggar family. But on the other hand, as a cop, I'm saying, oh my gosh, this thing could be huge and terrible. Or,
but look,
it could be more than what we've already heard.
Right, but this is the key point. There's nobody denies this. The son volunteered the information to the parents.
Okay.
And they did give him counseling. They gave him therapy. They gave the girls therapy. And they took him to a police officer. I mean, that's quite a lot when you're dealing with a 14 and 15-year-old. Am I wrong here? That's a lot.
Now it's time for my illustration. Okay. And I'm going to give you not only the illustration, but I'm going to tell you real-life things of what have happened in my church or in my ministry. And I'm not going to give any names or anything. And I'm not going to reveal any secrets in case, people from our community are listening, because I've been here a long time. Dr. Grace, I'm going to make it personal with you and then let the audience make it personal. Let's say you're in my church, I'm the pastor. You've got a little girl, precious little girl. In the meantime, Josh Duggar is the children's minister of my church. And Josh Duggar has opportunities as the children's minister to be alone with your little girl. And then as some years go by, your little girl grows up under Josh Duggar's ministry in my church, and you find out, I don't care how you find out, but you find out that Josh Duggar molested 5 little girls, one of them 5 years old, multiple times for more than a year, and his parents found out about it and were told about it on 3 different occasions, and the parents took 16 months after all of that to do anything about it, and nothing, quote, legally ever happened, and the whole thing was just kind of pushed aside and record sealed. But then you find out that I knew all of this, and I let Josh Duggar be the minister over your little girl and have private access to her as the children's minister in our church. Now, when you found out about it, you would go apoplectic. You would be calling for my head, and then I said to you, but look, Grace, they handled it as a family. He confessed it, and everybody forgave everybody. It's no big deal. You would tell me to hit the road. You would say, how stupid could you be? I'm telling you, Grace, you know you would, because I know you're an awesome parent. And if you say that it wouldn't matter to you, then,
But I think, Carl, I think, though, that where I struggle with this is that I have a daughter and a son, and I'm trying to ask myself, let's say it was my son, right, who did that to my daughter. Then would I behave any different than the Duggars? And then when I was convinced that my son had truly repentant and was a different man, would I want this to be all over the press? And here's another angle, and this is what's also breaking now.
I can answer
the two
that too.
girls,
I know a real life case.
Yeah, hold on. We'll come to you in a second. And the 2 girls, the 2 sisters are saying, they've come out and said, Jill and Jessa, they're now grown and married, that they had forgiven their brother. In fact, they didn't even know it had happened at the time because he touched them. Basically, what is it that he did? Molestation is a big word. He touched their private parts while they were asleep and their clothes were on, right? That's what happened. They didn't even know it happened at the time. They didn't know until he told the parents, and then the parents told them. And they thought, okay, the family has dealt with it. They have said openly and publicly, we've been more victimized now than we ever were with Josh. But before I get to you, Carl, I want to play another clip of the parents explaining what exactly they were told by Josh, what exactly had happened, and how the girls found out about it.
Did he explain why? I mean, was that a question that you asked?
He said he was just curious about girls, and he had gone in and just basically touched them over their clothes while they were asleep, and they didn't even know he had done it. Mm-hmm. And so we went, and the first thing was to protect the girls, and so we went in.
The girls all sleep together?
Mm-hmm. Yes, the girls had 2 bedrooms at the time, but anyway,
how many girls were we talking about?
We had 5 girls at the time.
Okay.
And so, but anyway, he went in and said he had done this, and so we, first off, of course, really talked to him, and then we went and talked to all the girls and the children.
It was so important for us as parents to talk to our girls and make sure that nothing else had happened. And so
what did they say?
Well, one by one, as we talked with them, none of them were aware of Josh's wrongdoings.
So they learned about it from you?
Yeah.
Yes.
How, at that point, he had said that he had done this to how many of the girls?
That was to 2.
Okay. And so, but neither one had any recollection of it?
They did not know.
And what was their reaction when they learned it from you?
They really didn't know. And actually what happened was we asked them at first if anything happened, and then it was after some other things happened that we actually shared with them. And but we took a lot of steps. And at first we tried to deal with this in-house as parents. We were in shock, and we were trying to figure out what was the next step. But really, looking back, we did the best we could under the circumstances.
You're saying, what am I going to do? You're saying, he says he's touched 2 of the daughters, and you don't know what to do, right?
We didn't know, because at that point now, nobody knew about it, and besides Michelle and I and Josh.
And now the question they faced is, do we traumatize the whole family, or do we try to deal with it but kind of mitigate what has just happened? Your thoughts, Carl. Go ahead.
Yeah, my thoughts are legal and biblical. You do the right thing. He molested, and that is the legal definition of what he did, 5 girls multiple times over more than a year, to his 4 of them his own sisters, the other one a babysitter, told his parents, took them 16 months, and he was 15 years old. He's a young man with hair under his arms and in other places, in full manhood, just waiting a couple years to be deemed an adult by the law. And you do the right thing. And again, if I were to say to you, Grace, with your little girl in my church, and you found out that Josh Duggar was now the children's minister and had been alone with your little girl, and I recited that same scenario to you, and then I said to you, but look, he just touched them through their clothes. He was 15. She was 5.
Yes, but the question is this, Carl. Did he repent? Did he repent, and do we forgive him? I know you're an officer of the law, but you're also a pastor. At what point do we hold a man's sins against him?
Listen, I am a pastor, and I minister, and I am so ingrained and involved in ministry and hurting and ministering to these people, and some of them are in prison that I have ministered to, and I go and I visit them, and I minister to the families, and I weep with them. I can be a minister. But we've got to do the right thing, Grace. And if I said to you, and you came to me livid, and I said, Grace, don't worry about it. He repented, and he just touched them through their pajamas, and that they handled it in family. It's no big deal. He only did it to 5 girls, and 4 of them were his
you're
sisters,
saying that you wanted him in jail? Is that what you're saying? You think that he should have gone to jail?
I did not say that. I'm saying that in Florida, he probably would have. What I'm saying is it should, and I can tell you how families have handled it down here, but it should have been handled correctly. It should have been handled, and 16 months. I'm telling you, legal experts and the names are in the media in Arkansas have said those parents could have gone to prison for 6 years each. 6 years. That's a Class D felony for what they did. The thing is, the statute of limitations ran out. See, I'm telling you, Grace, there's 2 issues here for me. One, I know the legal issues because I dealt with it as a cop for 10 years. Number 2, the ministry issue. Of course there needs to be healing and ministry and forgiveness and love. Of course. But you don't want me to make him the children's minister of our church. And I've got people in my church and in the community who have done similar things over the 30 years I've been there. Some, have gone to prison and gotten out. I don't bring them back into the church and say, okay,
right, but he had a record.
You're going to work in the children's ministry.
Right.
I don't do that, Grace. If I did, they'd put me out of my ear.
Right. Are you saying that essentially the problem here is that he didn't have a criminal record that would alert future employers about his past? Is that what you're saying is the problem?
That is one huge problem. I think the whole thing was mishandled by the Duggar family from the information we have. Now, I'm not passing judgment because I still say there's a whole lot of stuff we don't know yet. But I think the Duggar we know the Duggar family mishandled it because legal experts are saying that, look, these guys should have gone to prison. I mean, they could have gone to prison, the adults. So I'm just saying, Grace, this is a huge mixed bag of worms. It's not over. We don't know everything yet. I'm urging people to please just wait until all of this pans out before we start jumping over on the side. And remember, Grace, if you were in my church and you found out Josh Duggar had done this and he was over your little girl, I don't care if all the things you've said to me, if I said them to you, you would be spitting nails. You would be livid.
But, Carl, I just want to understand, just before we end the segment, walk us through what would have been the ideal way for the parents to react. Tell me what Carl Gallups would do if your son came to you with that. What's the ideal? Paint us the picture of the ideal so we can see and assess how the Duggars didn't quite meet up to the ideal in your view.
Okay. In keeping in mind that I don't know all the facts, so I can only speak to what has been said. Now, what the Duggars said last night, according to In Touch magazine and their 7 points that they've given witnesses and names and legal documents, they were not forthcoming last night. So I don't know if we can believe what the Duggars said last night or not. So just based upon what they have said, the correct way to handle it would have been the first time he came to you, there needed to be some help gotten right then. And let me just answer it like this. I have ministered to a family that this almost identical thing happened. Almost. Wasn't quite as many girls, but they were sisters of the boy. And the family was broken. They were crushed. They were hurt. But their attitude was, we're going to protect these girls, but at the same time, and we love our son, and we will never quit loving him. We're going to help him, but we've got to handle this. We've got to protect our own legal matters. We've got to protect our son. We've got to get him some help. We're going to do it through the legal process, and we're going to protect these girls. And they took their son after he confessed, and they told him what they were going to do. They took their son, who, by the way, was a teenager. It's almost an identical case, and I knew all about this and was ministering and counseling through the whole thing. They took their son to the authorities. The authorities did deem him a juvenile. They dealt with him in the juvenile system, in the court system, and they got him some mental help. They got him some sexual help. There was a sentence of probation and other things that was passed, and he had the opportunity to have his records expunged, but it was all handled through the legal system. Nothing was hidden. Nothing was shoved aside. Parents didn't wait 16 months until he had done it 5 more times, and that's the way it's supposed to be handled. That's
so you're saying, right? You're saying the Duggars were far too lax, right? In your professional opinion.
I'm saying this thing stinks to high heaven, and there's a whole lot more information we don't know yet. And I'm urging people, please be careful about making any judgments until all the information is out. And people can say, well, Carl, you're making a judgment. And I'm saying, no, I'm not. My judgment is this thing is a mess, and we don't know everything yet. That's my judgment.
Well, Karl, your opinion is so wise, and it's based on so much experience as an officer of the law, as a pastor, and as a brilliant commentator on the news of the day. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. We love you. That was Carl Gallups. All right, CarlGallups.com, the author of Freedom, the radio host show, talk show host Freedom Friday, and he is the author of Final Warning, and the next book out will be Thou Prepared. Thank you, Karl.
See, we're together as we walk on by.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Walk out the door. Just turn around now. 'Cause you're not welcome anymore. Weren't you the one who tried to...
Well, who is right and who is wrong? On the Duggar controversy, Josh Duggar having molested his sisters when they were all young. He was age 14 and 15. He touched some of his sisters and a babysitter. They were asleep. They didn't even know what had happened until he confessed his wrongdoings to his parents. And his parents tried to deal with it as best they could, they have said in an interview on Fox News. And the reaction to them and to this story is just pouring in from everywhere. In fact, Governor Mike Huckabee has really basically embraced the family wholeheartedly. And he has come out with a public statement where he says that he stands with his friends. He considers the family his dear friends, and he believes that all of this is a campaign by an insensitive and bloodthirsty media, and that the victims, the real victims, are the sisters now who have to deal with all of this dirty laundry in public when the family had dealt with it. And as far as we know so far, and according to Huckabee, Josh reformed. He repentant. He became a deeply practicing Christian in every sense. And he changed his life. And the question is, should we be holding this against the adult? Is this fair against the adult man? Now, my perspective is as follows. If it is true, as the family has said, and as the sisters have said, that once he received therapy and they had gone to law enforcement, he really did change his ways. He never did it again. He became a different person. I think the story it incites a specific reaction. However, the question that is unanswered is, did he truly reform? Because all of this changes if we're going to find out that the behavior persisted if that's what we find out later, well, obviously our view of this will be different. But according to the facts that we know now, was Josh Duggar worthy of being completely forgiven? Was the family right in trying to keep this hidden because they had overcome a trauma? This is the key question. And a question a lot of Christians are asking is, well, wait a minute, isn't there a double standard in the media here? You have for all, before this controversy emerged, an exemplary Christian family doing very well on a reality TV show. And suddenly, this controversy is being blown up out of proportion. By contrast, look at somebody like Hillary Clinton, where she enabled a known sexual predator, her husband, for years. The women have come forward saying that many women have come forward that he harassed them. He even raped Juanita Broaddrick, according to Juanita Broaddrick. You have this person who is the possibly nominee of the Democratic Party, and nobody's talking about that. But this Christian family, who dealt as best as they could with a teenage son who was out of control, and as far as we know, completely changed his ways, this now, everybody's talking about it, and people are calling them hypocrites. Is there an agenda? And Megyn Kelly rightfully asked the parents of Josh, Jim, Bob, and Michelle, that very question. Is there an agenda?
Has been greater because people object to who you are and what you stand for.
I think some out there do.
Yeah.
Do you think, in particular, your Christian beliefs are at issue here?
Well, I think as people on the outside think, well, Christians are supposed to be perfect. They're supposed to say, you're supposed to live this perfect life. No, you know what? All of us as Christians, we struggle every day from their records being released.
Well, Huckabee in his statement said very clearly that to be a Christian doesn't mean that we are perfect, but it means we are trying to emulate Christ who is perfect. And that's a key distinction. So there's no hypocrisy when a family like this deals with sinful behavior. They know what is right, and they're trying to get there. They're trying to get there. That is the struggle of every Christian. And the question is the media trying to vilify them so that their entire set of Christian beliefs is soiled, and so that we all become really cynical? There is no good Christian family out there, and there are all these dark secrets. Is that what the media really is trying to advance here? I have to say that I come at this from a couple of perspectives. One is, I can imagine if this had happened in my family with my really old-fashioned, this is the age before political correctness, my really old-fashioned dad and strict dad and my deeply Christian mom. And if I had a brother, and he was 14 and 15, and he went to my parents and told them that this had happened, you know what they would do? This was before, like I said, before the age of political correctness. First of all, I don't think that my parents would ever have told the girls, because we were asleep and didn't know it. They would have given a brother that I don't have, they would have given him the beating of a lifetime. And I think he would never do it again. That would have been the reaction before the age of political correctness. That's what my parents probably would have done. They would have handled it right there and then, but they would have handled it in-house. And I don't think they would have ever told us. Just to spare us the grief that the sisters went through and are still going through. I think that the most touching moment in the Megyn Kelly interview with the parents came at the very, very end, when she asked them, well, you really must be going through hell. Listen to this.
It must have been terrible. I mean, I'm sure you're going through hell right now.
I think what's so devastating as a mama for me is we took our children to the safety center, the Children's Safety Center. We trusted them. We trusted the police department. Our children poured out their hearts. They shared everything. And then to have their trust betrayed, and for all of their information and everything they'd shared to be turned over to a tabloid, for those things to be twisted and shared in a slanderous way, story after story, tabloid after tabloid. As a mom, that breaks my heart for my girls, because I think this is such a horrible, they've been victimized more by what has happened in these last couple of weeks than they were 12 years ago, because they didn't even understand or know that anything had happened until after the fact, when they were told about it. And so I think we haven't, in our hearts before God, we haven't been keeping secrets. We have been protecting those that honestly should be protected. And now what's happened is they've been victimized by people with an agenda and for whatever profit they think they're going to get. But in this, one thing I know is that God is going to use all of this for good.
Well, the point is that the police report that was supposed to be sealed was leaked. And that's obviously wrong. Usually we protect the names. When it comes to minors, we don't release it. And now everybody knows. And everybody knows that the victims of Josh were his sisters. And his sisters have now come out making public statements about it. That's not right. And usually the liberal media is up in a furor about protecting the rights of children. But not when it comes to a Christian family. No. When it comes to a Christian family, drag their name through the mud. You know why they want to do that? Because they believe the more they do that, it besmirches the values of Christianity itself. But you know, this is not going to work. It's not going to work. We're going to continue to follow this story. And I'm really eager to see, read, observe all the details that come out. But one thing is crystal clear. Even if a Christian fails, it does not besmirch Christianity. It is a testament to the beauty of the Christian faith that we can fail, we are forgiven, and we can be fully and utterly reborn. Is that Josh's story? Was he fully and utterly reborn? If that is the case, that will truly be a beautiful story and one which will validate the Christian faith. And if it turns out that he wasn't reformed, it doesn't besmirch Christianity itself. Because we still have here an example of a family working hard to try to do what is good, to try to live up to the values of the faith, even when it is extremely difficult. This is Dr. Grace, upholding values that are never going to die.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Let's not make it harder than it has to be. It's all sleeping girls, chasing boys, chasing girls, looking out to the west.
Another big story in the news. According to Vanity Fair, Bruce Jenner is no more. Introducing Caitlyn Jenner, the Olympic athlete who won the decathlon in 1976, declares that he wants to be a woman. And you know what? Simply because he wants to be a woman, we should all say, oh, hail the woman. I'm sorry, Bruce. It doesn't work that way. This is an example, really, of, that tale about the emperor having no clothes and nobody says it, that the emperor has no clothes. Bruce Jenner, you have no clothes. I don't care how many times you say that you're a woman. I don't care what you want to call yourself. Caitlyn, Catherine, Cressida, Cassandra. I don't care. You were born Bruce Jenner, a man, and you shall die, Bruce Jenner, a man. Now, in between birth and death, you may have a psychotic episode. And you may have lots of PR people around you telling you that your psychosis is reality. But I'm here to tell you, you were born a man, and a man you shall die, no matter what you think you can do to yourself. He explains in this Vanity Fair article that he underwent a very long procedure to become the woman that he really is. He underwent 10-hour facial feminization. You see, women that are born women, they never have to undergo a 10-hour procedure. Their face is just naturally feminine. And he experienced a panic attack afterwards. And he recalled thinking, what did I just do? What did I just do to myself? And, instead of the professionals around him telling him, Bruce, you had a psychotic episode and you thought you were a woman and you underwent a procedure to try to make you a woman, but you're never going to be a woman. No, you know what all the experts around him told him? Don't worry, it'll pass. You'll soon feel like a woman. Just give it time. In another age, we would have told him, you know what, Bruce? Your conscience was crying out to you. What am I doing to myself? What did I just do? This is wrong. This is going against the order of creation. This is the destruction of the way God made me so that I can remake myself, not in his image, but in my own image. This is the height of pride. This is the height of hubris. That's what his conscience was trying to tell him. But see, there's nobody around telling him that's conscience and common sense talking to you. No, instead, the doctors are confirming, they're enabling, they're enlarging his psychosis. They're telling him, go, Bruce, go. And so is the rest of the media. Go, Bruce, go. You know what? I'm never going to call him Caitlyn. He's always going to be Bruce to me. I'm not buying that nonsense. And if you read the piece that has just been released, by the way, the full Vanity Fair articles, he's going to be on the July issue. It's going to be released soon. And it's supposed to be a spread of him, and everyone's saying how gorgeous he looks. And if you ask me, he looks like a man trying to be a woman. I mean, I don't see the beauty there. It's as clear as day that that's a man. Well, there's one part of this article that has been, there's a part of it, the interview with him that was released. And the author at one point says, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I referred to you as Bruce, but I should have referred to you as Caitlyn. And he says, he says that he himself messes it up as well. Somebody recently said to him, hi, Bruce, said hello. And he said, hi, Bruce here. And then he went to himself, oh, expletive, it ain't Bruce. I was screwing up doing it. So he himself continues to think of himself as Bruce. He still can't quite think of himself as Caitlyn. Guess why? Because he was born Bruce and he will die Bruce. And, I thought there was a really interesting part in the interview that has gone largely unexplored. Because the author who conducted the interview also interviewed Jenner's 4 children from his first marriages. There is Bert, Cassandra, Christy, Brandon. And, it's Brandon and Brody are the other 2 children. So it's Bert, Cassandra, Brandon, and Brody. So those were the 4 children from his first 2 marriages. And they basically describe an insensitive father, quote, who had been absent for years at a time. So basically, when they were growing up, he was a deadbeat dad. He was out doing his own thing. He was out pursuing fame and Olympic glory. And one of his kids says, I have high hopes that Caitlyn is a better person than Bruce. I'm very much looking forward to that. That's, I think, really revealing. And it occurred to me, some people are saying, did Bruce Jenner really remake himself for money and attention? And there's a lot of theories out there. I don't think so. The guy looks really messed up to me. Doesn't look, when I see Bruce Jenner, I don't think entrepreneur. But when people radically change their looks, it occurred to me that he is bearing a very deep self-hate. He probably hates who he has been. There's probably a lot of guilt there for having basically betrayed 3 families. 3 marriages end in divorce and multiple children in the mix. And at least the children from his first 2 marriages don't really think he was such a good person. He probably doesn't think he's such a good person. Is he trying to change himself because he's so guilt-ridden by the fact that he's been a lousy person most of his life? To me, it's pretty obvious. That's pretty obvious. That jumps out at me. Well, no, not so the media. Oh my goodness, this is going to change the way we see the issue. This is going to help so many people. Bruce is a hero, according to the mainstream media. In other words, those who are enabling him in his current psychosis. And Bruce, buying it hook, line, and sinker, trying to tell us that at last he is truly free, when all I can see is the emperor has no clothes.
I was probably at the games because I was running away from a lot of things. Very, very proud of the accomplishment. I don't want to diminish that accomplishment. The last few days in doing this shoot was about my life and who I am as a person. It's not about the fanfare. It's not about people cheering in the stadium. It's not about going down the street and everybody giving you that a boy, Bruce, pat on the back. Okay? This is about your life. Bruce always had to tell a lie. He was always living that lie. Every day, he always had a secret from morning till night. Caitlin doesn't have any secrets. As soon as the Vanity Fair cover comes out, I'm free.
First of all, Bruce, you don't know. You don't know how you're going to feel. Did you know after you had your 10-hour procedure that you were going to have a panic attack and ask yourself, what have I done? How do you know what's going to happen to you going forward? Are you really going to look at yourself in the mirror and say, that's the real me? Or is that sense of self-hate and loathing only going to grow? Is that guilt only going to grow? Is that voice of conscience only going to grow? Telling you, you know what, Bruce? You're acting like a god. As though you can remake yourself in your own image. You don't have the right to do that. That's a grave sin. There's an article in the Miami Herald called Caitlin's Choice. It's an editorial. And it goes on to talk about the plight of people like Bruce and how they face intolerance and hate and discrimination. And, you know, those are the buzzwords that the liberals use. If you don't approve of what Bruce is doing, you're intolerant and you're hateful. But that's not accurate. To disapprove of something doesn't mean that you're not tolerant, and it doesn't mean that you hate. You can disapprove and be the only person in the room who truly loves. It is with a loving heart that I say, Bruce, what have you done to yourself? You're destroying yourself. To destroy yourself, to become something that's in your own mind, that's not self-love. The person who says don't do that is expressing love. You know, it's all the rage now, gender theory. And we've got to be compassionate. We've got to understand what these people are going through. Instead, we should be doing the opposite. There's a really good article in CNS News about what Christianity teaches. That God created man and woman in his image. And he didn't only create them individually in his image. He created them together as a unit in his image. Together, they reflect the light of God. And when we tamper with this, we are tampering with the natural order, which only leads to great confusion and great darkness. Bruce Jenner is no hero. He is only adding to the great confusion and darkness that characterizes our age. And if you ask me, he doesn't look like a woman. He still looks like a man. And that's the voice of a man, too. Common sense. This is Dr. Grace saying this emperor has no clothes.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Shut up, just shut up, shut up, 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 shut up, just shut up, shut up.
Are social issues hurting Republicans? That is the Wall Street op-ed by Carl Rove this week. And he points to a survey, a May 10 Gallup survey, which shows that the share of Americans calling themselves social liberals has risen to 31% from 25% in 2009. And the share of self-described social conservatives has fallen to 31% from 42%. So, the piece goes on to argue, if there are less people overall identifying themselves as social conservatives, should the Republican Party still be the party of socially conservative values? And he says, yes, we should. We should because a lot of those folks who voted for Mitt Romney have socially conservative values, those who voted for him in 2012, and we need to maintain many of those voters if we're going to win. So we have to do it for political reasons and also moral ones. Yes. But, quote, the GOP must find language that holds social conservatives while attracting socially moderate independents and even Democrats who think their party's left wing is too wacky. End of quote. If you're confused, that's mutant speak. That's Washington speak. Because he's saying, yes, hold on to the social values for political and moral reasons, but also let's find better language to hold on to the social conservatives amongst us, but attract the liberals and the Democrats. You know what, Karl Rove? Why don't we just stick to the truth and use the language of the truth and let elections, parties, be based on the truth? Let parties rise and fall based on the truth. Let nations rise and fall based on the truth. Why don't we stick to what we believe and say what we believe in plain, clear language? Plain, clear English language. We don't need a new language. We don't need to bend ourselves. We don't need to remake ourselves. First of all, it doesn't work. It never works because it's phony. So phoniness doesn't work. It doesn't work in private life. It doesn't work in relationships. It doesn't work in politics. People see through that. But you know what he goes on to say, and then it all becomes clear. The GOP's 26 campaign, quote, must not be one simply of mobilization and turnout. But instead, we need a new candidate. Now I'm paraphrasing. You know, it has to be a campaign of persuasion, quote unquote, that pulls in millions of Americans who have not voted. Quote, this means nominating a candidate who both excites the base and appeals beyond it. That's easy to say, harder to do. You know what he's really saying? Let's go for the shiny new object, Marco Rubio, yes. The man of the moment, the glamour king. The one who is Republican light, who fudges the issues enough to bring in possibly the young, to bring in the Hispanics, to bring in some of the independents who want a fresh face. The shiny new object. So this article really amounts to, let's dump our socially conservative values and use modern language that waters down what we believe, put forth a candidate that's young and fresh, maybe, just maybe, then we'll win again. And we have to ask, what exactly would we have won if we sell out everything that we believe in order to win? Instead, a man of his years should not be telling us to look for the shiny new object, but should be saying, let us stay true to our core values, the Constitution, and our biblical principles that made this nation great. No. That kind of plain, simple language you're never going to get from Karl Rove. He's too sophisticated. But you know what I have to say to him? Karl Rove, just shut up. And the opposite of Karl Rove, someone who shouldn't shut up, who should just keep right on talking, in our grab bag segment today is Pam Gellar. She is the one who has stood up against this culture of political correctness, and she's standing up to the radical Islamists. She's in the news again because a man in Boston was shot to death by terror investigators. This guy initially wanted to behead blogger Pamela Gellar, and then he decided instead to target police officers, but he was killed instead. They foiled the plot before they got to Pamela Gellar. She is a target, especially since she held that cartoon contest, the Mohammed cartoon contest. Well, she released an email to the AP after this story broke that she was possibly one of the targets. Quote, they want to make an example out of me to frighten the rest of the U.S. into silence and submission. She also says, this is not about me. This is about whether the U.S. will stand for freedom or submit and cower before violent intimidation. Dead right, Pamela Gellar. The issue that we face now when confronting Satan's minions, whether those minions are in Syria or Iraq or on our own soil, is once again, do we stand firm for who we are? Or do we sell the baby with the bathwater? Do we dump the baby with the bathwater? Do we give up our freedoms in order to try to gain a little bit of an illusory security? Do we silence our thoughts? Do we allow them to intimidate us? Do we allow our society to be changed and modified by fear? If we do, they win. Satan's minions despise freedom because freedom is the basis of all morality. Without freedom, there can be no morality. Because in order to be moral, one must be free to choose either right or wrong. That's why the greatest act of our Creator when He created us, man and woman, was to give us free will, to say you're free to choose. And when we choose right, we reap the joys of choosing right. But the beginning of all morality is that free choice. And Satan's minions want to take away that freedom so that they can bring a dark shroud all over the globe, in Syria, in Iraq, and even in America. Well, good for you, Pamela Gellar. Do we stand for freedom or not? I'm for freedom no matter what. This is Dr. Grace, upholding values that won't die.
With the stars and stripes and the eagle flies.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.